Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. You guys, this is a hot topic. It's very divisive, which is why we want to do it, because that means there's a lot of different opinions on it. Prepare yourselves.
Yeah. So just as a little bit of backstory, I wanted to say two things. Number one is that a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I put on our Instagram page a survey about religion. And it was one of those ones with a slidey bar. So you could slide the little icon to the left, or you could slide it to the right to indicate how strongly you felt about something. And the question was, have your religious beliefs changed since the death of your person? And on one side, it was they've grown stronger. And on one side, it was they've grown weaker, or that I've lost my faith, or whatever faith system I had before. And when Instagram showed me the results, the little icon was right in the center, which I thought was really weird because it seems like people have changes in their religiosity after death often. So I thought it was weird that it didn't go either direction until I opened it and realized that this was a function of mathematics and statistics. There had been enough people on both sides of that spectrum that the average was no movement at all. And I thought, and I have thought since, that that is so fascinating, that just as many people have had their religion strengthened as have fallen away or have lost their belief system that they had before. Fast forward, that's just been in our minds. We've asked for listener submissions on a variety of topics, and sometimes we get like one response.
Yeah. Sorry.
And sometimes we get none responses. Well, we said, hey, we're kind of curious about your religious experiences, and
Boom.
people want to talk about this, is what we've learned.
We got 7 in one day, in like within a few hours.
Yeah.
So this is very, very, very near and dear to people's hearts. Near and dear, or like near and far.
Yeah. So we're going to read these submissions that people gave us. We just asked, how have your feelings about your religion changed after the death of your person? And people, we're not going to say who they are. It's going to be anonymous, and we're just going to read what they have to say.
Yep.
Should be interesting.
We like literally copied and pasted each story into a separate document without people's names on it. So we don't even know who they are right now. And some of these are really short. Some of them are longer with more detail. So they're going to be all different. And I think when it comes to discussions about religion, our atheist friends don't even like read it because they're like, well, I'm an atheist. It's not an issue. Yeah. So we didn't get any in that vein. But I will say that I have a lot of atheist friends. And I've heard from some of them that it didn't change one way or the other.
Right.
When they've had somebody die.
Because if you have no religion,
yeah,
it's like a lack of something. It doesn't.
Yeah. And actually, interestingly enough, one of my friends had a family member die, and that friend was atheist and still is atheist. And somebody came up to my friend at the funeral and said, this person is now with Jesus. And my friend said, if I thought that they were alive somewhere else, I would want to go be with them right now. But because I don't believe that he exists in that form, I have to make today be today, which is interesting because then, you know, we were brought up religiously, Anita. It's really common that that's the type of way that people talk, where it's like, oh, well, the person is dead. Therefore, you are trying to live as good of a life right now as you can so you can be with them again.
Yeah.
So it's like the same result, but different avenues and different beliefs. It's really fascinating I love learning about different people's perspectives.
I do think it's really fascinating. And just FYI, we have a lot of episodes where we've talked to people who do not have a belief in any sort of higher power or religion. And you can go back and listen to those if you want to have more experiences with that. The people who responded mostly have an experience. They're not atheists. Like you said, we didn't get a lot of those responses. So
yeah. And we try to keep our episodes to appeal to all types of audiences. So
yeah, hit a lot of experiences.
This is like kind of our first jump into religion, and I'm a little scared, but maybe it'll be good.
It's going to be great.
Okay, here is our first submission. I was raised Catholic, and as an adult considered myself a non-practicing Catholic at most, agnostic at least. Watching my husband die so young, it didn't necessarily change my beliefs, but I am mad. I also get so irritated when anyone tries to tell me God has a plan, God will save me, etc. Truthfully, if there is a God, they can get hacked. It will be me that gets me through this. Totally relate. I can see that. Yeah.
All right. For me, I felt like watching my husband get sick and die of cancer killed any religious views we both have. My father-in-law came from a cult-like group called The Way International, and they believed that if my husband doubted, even for a second, that he would be healed, then he would be doomed. My father-in-law sent us books, articles, etc. about God and believing in God, came over and preached nonstop, sent us lies about fake cancer cures, and yet he couldn't even tell you where my person's cancer was or what treatment he was on. He told him the reason his mom died of cancer was because she didn't believe in God enough, and the same thing would happen to him if he didn't believe. The father-in-law wanted him to attend a religious retreat with a bunch of unvaccinated people in the middle of a pandemic and would not take no for an answer, because that meant he wasn't believing in God enough. So he kept asking us to the point of harassment. Fortunately, my husband didn't tolerate that. I realize his beliefs are wrong, and my father-in-law has some serious misbeliefs about religion, but for both my late husband and I, it was enough to never want anything to do with religion ever again. I will never forget when we tried to tell my father-in-law that my husband might need hospice. At first, he screamed at his own son because saying he needed hospice meant he didn't believe enough. 6 months later, when my husband did go on hospice, my father-in-law literally cheered because he thought it meant he was choosing God over modern medicine.
All right. This is not going to be the episode for this because I have a lot to say on different mindsets of extremity. But and also I think it's important though to say that within religion, it's a continuum. I've heard it called that, a spectrum, whatever you want to call it, continuum spectrum. So there are going to be some more extreme, some that are maybe culturally religious, which is like you go to Easter at Easter Mass or something if I was Catholic, but or Jewish, yeah, cultural Jewish. But that sound, yeah, that's a
Rough
little
to
on a
read. And, I think that in religion, that's something that we often deal with. That's really hard is the idea of miracles. And when you don't get a miracle, like that's a really tricky thing. Like, I don't know how you deal with that.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't either. Thank you for your submission, and that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. So, okay, here's our next one. Now, we didn't even put these in an order of differing beliefs. Like, it's seriously just in the order that they came to us. Okay.
In the order in which they were received.
Yes. I was raised in a very conservative church synod. Is that what it is, Anita?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I think so. We've Googled it, and it means an assembly of the clergy and also the laity in a diocese or other division of a particular church.
Thank you.
Google.
I met my husband when I was 16 and he was 17. She was 16, going on 17. Sound of Music romance. He was sort of raised as a Catholic, but hadn't ever really attended. Through our history of dating, he attended church services with my family, and we were married in my home church. We moved away after college, but returned to the same church for our kids' baptisms. After my youngest was 3 years old, I decided to become a substitute teacher and ended up going back to school and teaching at a parochial school in the same synod, but different location. When the kids were in high school, we moved from Washington to Wisconsin. We attended church in a different denomination, but regularly attended until the kids graduated from high school. Then things were very sporadic for the entire family. We were extremely close-knit because the rest of our relations all lived in Wisconsin. Last May, I watched a service remotely while my husband was away for work. It hit me hard, and I felt it was a message directly for me. My main takeaway was that life is like vapor. Time is short. Things were going well for us. My son had just landed a great job a little over an hour from us, and I was starting to lose love for my job and was looking forward to making a change so that I could work and travel with my husband while he was on a project. I felt God was preparing me for something. My husband returned home from his work trip. He was sick, so I made him test for COVID, and he thought it was a sinus infection. He tested positive, was on blood thinners, and unbeknownst to us, his blood was way too thin, which means it won't clot. He developed horrible headaches, which we thought were connected to COVID. By this time, I had also tested positive. We went to a beautiful spot in our town that overlooks the water to soak up the sun. We really didn't have horrible symptoms. We made our 5-year plan, something we hadn't done before, and we tended to take things as they came and always kept plans and goals pretty general until we were ready to move. That late afternoon, he had a horrible headache, and as you can imagine, it needed an ER trip, which means I would not be able to be with him. Turns out he had bleeding near his brain for about 2 weeks, which led to surgery, horrible hospitalization, and death. He died June 11th, 2022. Here I am grieving, trying to figure out who I am without my constant person, wondering why this happened now. We were 2 weeks away from a trip to Ireland to celebrate our 32nd anniversary. Thankfully, I've been able to feel blessed, not at first, and pain still lingers. Even though I would love to have him by my side, I feel God put some things in place for me. I tell myself I should have gone first, and we often bantered about that, but he had always kind of known he wasn't going to live a long life. We were not thinking this young, however. But because of that feeling, he had gotten some life insurance. We had just sold our real estate at the high point of the market to position ourselves for our next step. Our son had launched, in air quotes, and my adult daughter was starting to, quote, adult. I recently quit my job. I had prayed to God for help in making the decision and asked that it be real clear to me if I was no longer where I belonged. Let's just say work became even worse for me, and once I put in my notice, it got noticeably better. I've made myself wait before finding a new job until I feel a bit more centered and more sure of my next steps. It's just as hard having a lot of choices as it is when you have none. I'm a bit conflicted because I went to Sedona, and while I was there, I had my aura read. I was told I was surrounded by love, friends, family, and spirits, and they were all there for me. This isn't something that is supported by my religion, but I do feel it was helpful for me to hear. I've lost a lot of ability to concentrate on reading, So I find books that have short chapters help me focus on my why. What is my purpose? Why am I still here and without my partner? I pray daily for guidance and healing. I know I have to do something that involves my heart because I have a need to help others. But I also know I have limitations and have to be able to balance with me time. This has turned out longer than I intended, but I just want to say that I feel strongly my faith is going to be a big part of my life. I don't know how I would be able to move forward without having my religion or faith in my life.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Yep. I feel like this is a common experience too. I mean, not the person dying young, but within the widowhood experience. Thank you so much. Okay.
Next.
My faith is absolutely my foundation, always has been and always will be. With that point made, I still don't understand why God allows people to get sick and die well before their time, or for sudden tragic death, or for lots of other crummy things, but I don't have to understand it. I continue to believe that God is good, that he loves me, and I am extremely thankful for the comfort he continually provides. Don't misunderstand. I'm still missing my husband nearly every minute of every day, but my foundation is firm.
All right. To the point. Next. My husband went to be with the Lord 2/22/23. That is the first time I have said it like that, and I fully believe it. I grew up in the church, attending every Sunday, Wednesday, and summer camps. My faith has grown stronger. My husband and I didn't attend church. We believe God is everywhere, and we didn't need to go to a building to worship. A pastor showed up in the ER as they tried to revive my husband. I asked him to pray with me, and when our grown kids arrived, they also asked for prayer. My mom told me I was going to pray like I have never prayed before. She couldn't have been more right. Prayer and reading devotional each morning gets me going. My belief that our time to leave this earth was decided before we ever got here has been the one thing that has gotten me through this. I am so thankful for the time I had and the life we built. I am sure I will hit the angry stage, and what I say might sound different, but I am sure my beliefs will be the same. Who knows? I'm not sure I know anything anymore. I feel that.
Same.
Yeah. I think one thing that's interesting, as everybody that has a differing belief listens to this discussion, we all have needs and wants for comfort and direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really interesting and fascinating to hear how people find that, whether it's through religion or looking for things that might be framed through a religious lens, or some people are, more of the universe is bringing it to me. Some people are like, whatever happens, happens. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful.
I'm just having this, it's so weird that we can have so many different thoughts on one kind of topic. It's kind of blowing my mind right now.
Well, I mean, look at cheese.
Religion, cheese.
Look at how many kind of cheeses there are.
Yeah, okay.
And differing opinions. It's crazy.
Thank you for bringing me back to planet Earth.
You're welcome. I'm here for you.
I've been a widow for 4 years in July. I was heavily involved in my church, volunteering as the comic host for a children's production for about 10 years.
Wait. Is that like a church clown? Please, we have to know. Whoever wrote this, Will you tell us? Because I think Anita could do this. Teach her.
My husband was sick, and I prayed hard for many years for him to get better. His passing was actually unexpected. After he passed away, I was angry, cussing out and yelling at God, angry for 3 years. I fell into a pretty deep depression because I felt like God abandoned me. My relationship with my teenagers deteriorated greatly right after he passed. I felt like as a good, quote, Christian who did things for God that I was abandoned. I still believed God existed, but he just didn't want to bless me. Last May, it was so bad that I had to do something to get better mentally and spiritually. So I went back to church and started praying again. It wasn't pretty. I refused to worship. I refused to get to know anyone from my new church. My showing up was good enough, was going to be good enough. In January of this year, I started turning to God more and more, joined a small group, became involved in a ladies' Bible study. I became more open with the prayers. Let me tell you, life changed in bold and exclamation points.
On all caps.
Yes, the floodgates opened and my prayers were being answered constantly. Even when a door shut that I prayed to open, God was very clear to me that it wasn't my door. I felt at peace. My relationship with my kids has witnessed a miracle and we are doing better than ever. Big prayers were answered. My prayer to God was, please, Lord, help me turn my control over to you. I'm done with being in charge. This was so hard. As a widow, having control was so important to me. Everything was constantly being ripped away before. My husband, kids, friends, and even my job was rocky. So to turn the control over to God, who I felt wasn't blessing me, seemed impossible. But I thought I would truly try, and I'm so happy I did. Thank you for allowing me to share my story with you. I'm looking forward to listening to this podcast. Faith as a Christian is the ultimate. I lost that. It was very hard to come back, but I did it. To this date, this is my greatest achievement. Wow.
Nice. I think we all can relate with having lack of control. So thank you for putting that into words. Okay, next. I have been very active in my church for the last 10 years. I am on the praise and worship team, teach children's church, am a counselor at summer camp, work VBS. I know what that is because the church that I play organ at, they have it. Vacation Bible School.
Yeah.
Can I just say, they make it fun and they like sometimes go to outer space and like dress up like not real outer space, but like they make it fun and themed. And there's snacks. They always give us the band the extra snacks. So anyway, I digress.
So Mel's a fan, is what
I'm
she's saying.
I'm a fan of VBS. Yeah. I know a lot of people get mad at God when their spouse dies. Mine was 47. I was 41 and we were together for almost 24 years. I have never been mad at God. He died on Good Friday. We didn't go to church on Easter because I knew everyone would be coming up to us. And I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. We went back on a Wednesday night. My daughter and I didn't sing that night. I started singing the next Sunday and my daughter the next Wednesday. We haven't missed a Sunday since. We really are holding on to God. Getting mad at God only puts my eternity in danger. I know that my mom really finds a lot of peace in the community and camaraderie and the consistency of weekly church service. So I can see how that is helpful to have a community that's supportive.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are elements of anger, discussions of anger or not having anger in there. And yeah, it's a thing.
Thank you so much for your submission. After my first major loss, I told God he was worthless because he let my mom die young. I fired him. I'll do it, life, by myself. I didn't realize at the time I just promoted myself to God in my life. Bad plan.
Oh,
Wah, wah.
Oh, man.
Through a lot of experiences, I slowly opened myself to God again. And guess what? He showed up. With both of my husband's illnesses and death, I've deliberately and repeatedly chosen to trust. Not to be confused with liking what was happening, but I've continued to choose trust. That decision allows me the possibility of a life worth living without my late husband, that I have a real future instead of writing off the rest of my life, i.e., learned life is truly hopeless only when I decide it is. That's a lot of loss in your life.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed when people can choose to trust. I think it's like almost a skill that you might have to develop. So
yeah, like a muscle.
Very interesting. Yeah, totally.
And I think that from a religious perspective and a psychological perspective, the learning that life is hopeless when you decide it is, that definitely will confirm itself.
Yeah.
Through either lens. So yeah. Some people learn it through religion. Some might learn it through something else. And it's so true. The human brain, man.
It's wild.
Like we have to fight so hard to survive and to like decide to live. So thank you for that submission. All right. Next. I'd say that it's been difficult trying to come to terms with faith. I want to believe that I'll see my husband again, but it's hard to imagine when you're down in the dumps on a grief wave. Our reality is that he's gone. I grew up going to my little New England church, a Protestant congregational church. Was baptized there, even got to play the baby Jesus in the Christmas play when I was 2 months old.
Oh,
Yeah! We got married in that church and had our daughter baptized there. Sadly, it's where we had my husband's celebration of life and funeral. He was raised Catholic. His parents found a new, more evangelical church as they got older and were excited to invite us to attend there. We were happy with my traditional congregational church and would joke with his parents about why their church was better. It's not like we weren't going to church. They pressured us a little, but my husband put his foot down and we didn't have to say no each week. His younger brother is the associate pastor at the evangelical church. So when I had to plan my husband's service, I knew that he would want to take part. I worried that he'd step on our minister's toes. I wanted him to be the brother, not the pastor. I heard some rumblings that it was getting a little long or out of hand, so I had to ask my sister-in-law to tell him to rein it in. It's sort of funny looking back on it. Instead of cutting back, he just talked faster or crammed in as many scripture quotes as he could. His kids, also involved in their church, spoke first, and it was nice. It was short, to the point, and funny. And then he got up, and the litany of scripture began. Sitting next to my daughter, who wanted to speak, but did it off the cuff, we held hands in the front pew. In my head, I was wondering how long the preaching would go. We'd think he was wrapping it up, and he'd pull out another Bible verse. We chuckle about it now. It was a good break in the service for us to get it together. We were able to pull it together before we got up to speak, and I'm sure it was helpful to my husband's parents, but for me, it was a little much. My daughter got up, did a fantastic job speaking about her dad. She was funny. My husband was funny, and she inherited his sense of humor. She got some good chuckles out of the packed church. I swear she almost sounded like she was doing a stand-up routine. I was so proud of her. I guess if I try to come to terms with my faith, it's comforting to think that we'll be together in the end. My grandmother had a very wry outlook and used to say, "When you're dead, you're dead. If that's the alternative, then we won't know or care once we're gone." So either way, I'm okay with it.
I've actually had those same thoughts about religion. I'm like, well, if nothing is there after we're dead, then we might it's like, but if there is, then I'm going to do the stuff in case there is. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to, I don't know. It's like one of those Punnett squares that you used to do in 10th grade biology.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't have any idea what you just said. It made sense in my own head. Okay.
I don't even know what a Punnett square is. So
it's
that's
like
fine.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll draw a picture for you later.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready, Mel?
Yeah.
I grew up very religiously. It was very ingrained culturally and familially. When my husband died, I at first leaned on my beliefs because that's what I knew. As time has continued, I find myself feeling unmoored. Are my beliefs valid? How do I know I have truth? There are so many different ideas. And was I just doing it out of habit? I've never been angry or even doubted the existence of God. I feel a simple faith in that. I have become more distant from my childhood religion, but haven't left. I'm in an exploratory phase and open to whatever comes.
Very nice.
Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people will resonate with that too. Kind of just like I don't know. Thank you for that submission.
Yes, thank you. In my opinion, my religious beliefs have stayed the same in my widowhood, but I guess my religious practices have increased and strengthened. To clarify, I've had my Christian faith since I was preteen, and while that has remained a constant aspect throughout my life, my attendance at church stopped as a young adult when I moved away from home. Although my wife grew up attending church, due to her mom was a former Sunday school teacher, she was not religious at all. Occasionally, she used to ask me some questions about my faith, but they never resulted in anything more than that. I remember one such discussion took place in the hospital room with some friends just before she was transferred to our local hospice for end-of-life care. Both myself and one of our friends present, who was a Muslim, talked about our respective faiths and our beliefs about the afterlife. We had a nice discussion, and she answered her curious questions. That was the last time we spoke about religion before she died 3 weeks later. A couple of months after she died, I ended up going to the local church that her mom still attended. I went purely to attend a service that her mom had arranged to commemorate her. I was expecting my attendance to church to be a one-off, but it turned out to be But as it turned out, 7 years later, I'm still attending that church and have become an active member of the congregation. Some people may see this action, that regular attendance and involvement in church, as a strengthening of my faith, but it doesn't feel that way to me. To me, it feels like my faith is at the same level it's been for many, many years. There's no anger or resentment aimed towards God regarding the death of my wife, and those many unanswered prayers, and unanswered is in quotes, about curing her of cancer. That's never been a part of my process. What I've wrestled with over the years, though, is the fact that, so far as I'm aware, my wife died an unbeliever. I've talked about this to other members of my church and my pastor, too. From my understanding of my faith, that means I won't see her again in heaven. However, in some of those discussions, I often thought of the thief on the cross next to Christ and its example that individuals can come to salvation extremely late in life, even on their deathbed. So what happened in those last weeks between her and God, especially in those last several days when she was unconscious? I do not know, but I have hope that God was still reaching out and seeking her to find him right until the very end. And I hold on to that, and it gives me some hope of seeing her again.
Oh, this has brought up an interesting point, and that it's not just about our religious beliefs, but also about our person's religious beliefs. And the idea that sometimes, like, we assume that religious beliefs bring comfort, and sometimes they might not, because there's, religious beliefs about certain actions or activities that may or may not have taken place that will not send your person to heaven or will not allow you guys to see each other again. So that's interesting, because I hadn't really thought about it in that light until reading through that maybe it's not a comfort to some people. And that's terrible.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either.
Oh,
Thank you
thank you
for
for that.
submitting that.
My husband died suddenly June 22nd last year. I am a believer in God, and this last 11 through 12 months has been difficult, but I do feel closer to God than when he died. My faith has helped tremendously, and I don't know how I would have gotten through this year alone without it. I don't go to church at the moment, but I'm a recovering alcoholic and attend AA and Al-Anon meetings, plus have gone through the grief share program and grief therapy. I consider myself a Christian and have gone to church in the past, but haven't found a church here in a location that I like. All of this and my relationship with God has been such a comfort. I meditate and pray daily and feel my spiritual life has been a salvation to me. Thank you.
Thank you
for sharing.
When people are recovering alcoholics and make the decision and take the time to go to recovery groups, that's a lot of energy and a lot of commitment and a lot of grit. So props to you for doing that. That's hard. And
yeah,
thanks for your submission and also sharing your thoughts. Okay, next. I don't know what I would have done without my faith in Jesus Christ and my church, Southern Baptist. As we dealt first with my husband's bladder and prostate cancers in 2012 and 13, and then brain cancer in 19 and 20. Oh my gosh, poor guy. He died in October 2020. I became a Christian at age 10 and have loved going to church ever since. It has sustained me as an individual, even after I married my husband, who was not a believer at the time. God has been and is my ever-present rock as I navigate life, particularly these 11 years, as he walked ahead of us in every stage of our cancer journey. Though my husband did not attend church with me, he never discouraged me from going. I believe with his realizing his mortality, one Sunday morning in December 2012, he sat on the bed as I was getting ready for church and said, "Where are you going to church this morning?" It was kind of a dumb question, but my answer was the name of the church, and then unless there's another church you would like to go to with me. He identified a different Baptist church in the area, and we went, and I still attend there now. He loved the church and pastor and came to know the Lord there, being baptized the following July after his chemo treatments for the bladder cancer. He had not been raised in church as I had, so it was a new thing for him, and it was a wonderful journey to travel with him until COVID moved us to watch services online, which we did. He died shortly after in-person church services resumed. At that point, we had been married 24 years, second marriages for both of us. There's a lot of discussion, especially, like, we're from Utah, right? So there's a dominant religion here, and I've heard some discussions about mixed faith marriages, and mixed faith even meaning a non-believer and then a person that believes in religion. And I think the fact that this listener's husband and her were able to connect and do something together and have that connection with each other is so beautiful. So we're glad that
Yeah.
before he died, after all those cancers, my gosh, that you were able to have something that you shared together.
Yeah, totally. Just a little note. I know that we had a couple other submissions, but we can't find them. So if you submitted one of these to us and we don't read it on here, it's not because we didn't think your thoughts were invalid or not appropriate to share. It's just that it might not have gotten sorted properly in our little brains. So thank you still for submitting and don't read too much into it. All right. I never had strong religious beliefs. As a kid, we went to Sunday school, and as we got older, church with my dad every week, but it never made sense to me. I experienced the death of a significant person in my life when I was about 17. I couldn't understand how the God talked about in church could possibly let that happen. Any chance of me ever believing in any religion died the day the man who was like a father to me died. My wife of 22 years died last year. It did not change my beliefs, but rather validated them. Of course, it is common for people to try to comfort you with platitudes like, quote, she's free of pain, she's in a better place, or in the extreme, you'll be reunited someday. These are well-intentioned, but are rooted in the speaker's belief and show no awareness or regard for people like me who do not share those beliefs. I do not challenge them, but rather say a polite thank you. I've even asked people who pray for me to pray for my wife because, hey, none of us really can ever know what's out there or not out there. And I feel strongly that people get to believe whatever they want. The freedom to practice whatever religion one chooses, including none, is an individual right, and religions can demand anything they want of their members. Where things go right is when churches get involved politically to force non-congregants to live by their tenets, and when individuals lose sight of religion's place in society and vote based on maintaining dominance over others with different beliefs. The platitudes offered to someone in grief is one small symptom of this. I think that's a topic that we could talk about for a long time, and how we allow people to have their own beliefs and not step on the toes of others who have different beliefs. And I don't know if we have any good answers for that, but I think a lot of people feel that way. Like, don't come at me with your religious platitudes because that's not how I feel. And don't force me to do things that make me act like I do believe in a religious way. So, yep, that's valid.
Okay, here we go. I grew up in a religion that many consider to be high stakes, and this religion has been a part of my family for many generations. As such, I grew up in a homogenized area with only one or two kids my age not belonging to the same religion. As a kid, I wasn't necessarily interested in church teachings, but was definitely scared if I ever thought about disobeying the teachings. I often felt that my interpretation of God and the teachings of the religion weren't congruent. In my community, I learned that I was to trust my intuition, but if it conflicted with what church leaders told me, that I was wrong. I believe this type of thinking, ignoring my intuition and trusting a human in a church leadership position, led me to a lifetime of getting into unhealthy relationships and not being able to identify abuse. As I had more time and space being an adult and traveling and learning of different faith traditions, as well as atheism, agnosticism, Buddhism, and others, I learned to understand the beauty in other traditions and measure them against what I was brought up with. I've always felt I belong in the middle of many types of people, and I felt like this way when my husband died. Because he died young and in a shocking manner, I felt a lot of fear. Part of me reverted to what I was taught as a child, probably based in fear, as well as listening to what people were saying to me at the time of his death. For a few months, I had a terrifying fear that if I didn't become the most religious person and follow all the religious rules, that I would go to hell and that I would never see my husband again. Over time, I've rejected this mentality completely. I've learned that religion can vary from a healthy place in someone's life to something dangerous and extreme. For me, I don't know the answers of what is after this life, but I've also struggled enough and clawed my way through this harrowing widow experience. And the only thing I know is that I'm okay with not knowing. As long as I do my best and treat each person I meet with kindness and empathy, I'll be okay with whatever that brings.
That kind of goes back to one of the ones earlier about the spectrum of religion,
Yeah.
and as we always joke about, like, cult,
Yeah.
versus religion. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and for some that maybe grew up in an more extreme, maybe community, I think sometimes we forget religion is somebody's belief system. But a lot of times, if it is an extreme situation, it's like, this is the only thing.
This is
And
the way.
it's fact. So, and if that's fact for somebody, cool. But remember, the word is belief. So
Yeah. And when you get into it, it's like, this is why there are wars in the world.
wars,
Over
and this
religion.
is and this is why people are not allowed to talk about religion at the dinner table.
Yeah.
So like, we hope that you guys, we hope we're doing an okay job of presenting this like
Yeah.
lovingly. Like, we love
Yeah.
everybody, and the spectrum of our widow's experience is wide, and the religious or non-religious experience. So
yeah, don't be mad at us. We're trying to do our best.
yeah, we're just reading stuff.
Hold space for everybody. Okay. I lost Hubs 2 years ago. We were practicing Catholics. The pandemic interrupted our regular church going, but we watched masses online as a family. Since losing my husband in August 2021, my kids have not gone back to mass except holidays. I have not gone often. I'm still watching a particular religious leader's masses and sermons, and for a while I went back to my childhood church because the husband and I were at another parish. I could sit through mass there as long as I was part of the choir. So in this different setting, I could keep my mind on the music and my task rather than letting my mind wander too. I want him to kiss my cheek at the sign of peace and hear his voice singing beside me in our pew next to our kids and my parents, which is what happened when I went back to our parish. I was happy to have communion and to sing and hear the sermons, but when my voice gave out due to allergies, I did not go back. I felt badly, like I had let them down, but I was also not sure I had contributed much. My faith has been challenged since he died in ways I did not anticipate. I went on a date with a very Catholic widower who wanted to talk about praying for our dead spouses to get out of purgatory. Well, I never considered husband was still in purgatory, as in my mind, any atoning he had to do was most likely covered by the 8 days of hell in the hospital with all the well-intentioned torture his body went through. Hey, I think they're onto something there. Apparently, I'm supposed to pray for his soul, but I just never figured I had any business in whatever is between God and my hubby. I teach religion in a faith-based school. I still feel my faith is strong and God being some comfort, but not as tangible as my husband's arm, which worries me sometimes. Did I idolize my hubs? Kind of. Wasn't I supposed to? I don't know. I took it as my job from God when I made the marriage covenant. I don't have all the answers or even many, but I trust that God does, and I don't have to. I do believe Hubs is better off in heaven with God than whatever kind of life he might have left, even in the best case scenarios the doctors offered. I had a beautiful dream, maybe a visit from him. First, I met his mother. She died before we could meet in this life. Gu consoled me as I cried about how much I missed him and how much it hurt, and she said that she had the same problem with her husband and that she eventually had to forgive him. Then my husband showed up with a bouquet of flowers much like the ones I carried in our wedding. He sheepishly grinned at me. I always told him not to buy flowers because it was a waste since he had no idea how to pick ones that lasted more than a day or so. So my workaholic hubby told me that he had gotten a really big promotion, but the only problem was that he would have to be away from me for a while. And I cried in his arms for what seemed like a very long time. And then I told him I forgave him because it was too hard not to. I woke up crying, but I felt like I had seen him truly. And I figured that that was a gift from God one way or another. I love dreams like that. I wish we could all have dreams like that.
Okay, this is a topic we should not talk about, but I'm going to say it.
Okay.
It reminded me, Catholic and LDS have certain beliefs on marriage ceremonies and being tied to those people. Like, so LDS, when you get married in a Mormon temple or an LDS temple, you're sealed like forever and ever and ever and ever.
That's eternity.
For eternity. What if you hate the person? Like, bye.
Yeah.
A long time. And then Catholic, I know that there is something kind of similar, right? But I am not Catholic, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But I remember there being something like that. So you Catholics that we love so much.
You Catholics.
I mean that in a nice way. You Catholics. Actually, one of the artists that I played for when I was on the road, he was Catholic, and so I got to go to mass sometimes and see what it was like. And I thought it was cool that they had stuff during the week, because what if you're on the road like we were and you were going to miss your mass? And then there's a lot of beautiful cathedrals, and so yeah. But I know that there's some stuff with like, well, some people won't get remarried because they're like, well, I'm
They're still married.
married in the eyes of the
Yeah.
church. So
Yeah. Interesting.
I know from our LDS friends that can bring a lot of problems,
Right.
a lot of stress. That can bring
Yeah.
some stress to some people.
I wanted to just add a little bit of my own experience, and that is that church can be really hard after the death of your spouse. Like, church is something that we did together all the time. So when you go there and your person's not there, for me, it was like for a really long time, it was a reminder of something that I had lost. So it was kind of like, it was weirdly like comforting and not comforting at the same time. So kind of
I
a
would say
strange
like
thing.
I don't usually talk about my anything with religion on
Yeah.
this at all, but my husband was pretty into church. I mean, we grew up in Utah, right? You know this. He grew up in Idaho, which is basically Utah for religion. And when you are part of a religion that is very family oriented and you don't fit the family mold,
Yeah.
you're always like, well, when I get married and when I have kids, then I'm going to fit in better. And I remember when we got married, he was like, yay, now I've made it. Everything's going to be fine. And I'm like, no, what about because I had been not in a family for so long. So I was already used to like not belonging, or people being like, "Oh, you're like a child. What are you?" I'm like, "I'm 33. What are you talking about? I'm not a kid." They're like, "Well, you're not married." I'm like, "That doesn't mean I'm a child."
Maybe
But
it was the unicorn hair
I
that
did
you
no,
didn't
I
have back then. I know,
no,
I know, I know. Keep
I
going.
my friends told me I looked like a soccer mom from Utah. Like, okay, so I have experience with never fitting the mold, and I've had bad experiences from people with that, and I've had really good and compassionate experiences despite that within religious context. So people, it's hard because people are people, and then when there's an umbrella of a religion over it, it's sometimes the religious practices bring pain if you don't fit in,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes they bring a lot of comfort whether you fit in or don't fit in. So I know this kind of sounds all vague and like it could go either way, but at the end of the day, we're all human. If the person at when your husband dies says, "Oh well, we knew Scott, but we didn't know you, so that's why we don't bring you any food or help you out," that's going to cause something that's kind of divisive. When that happened to me, and
Yeah.
then at the same time, the best people might live next door to that person that said that, and they're like, "I know that we don't know you very well because you've been on tour, but what do you need?" And then you make your new best friend.
Yeah.
So a lot of things can go either way, and I like what the one submission said where you determine your thoughts and which determines your experience, something to that summation, which is
Yeah.
really true because there's a lot we could get mad at, and there's a lot that we could find peace in. And at the end of the day, let's be good people and nice to each other. And people are
Yeah.
also going to be jerks. I'm sure we're jerks. We're probably jerks for putting this out. We're sorry. Are you
I
guys
think it's
traumatized?
interesting. No, well, I hope not. I would also just like to add that Mel and I have kind of made, I don't know if it was a conscious decision that we would mostly keep our own belief system out of our podcast for the most part. Just because we want the experience of our guests and such to be able to shine through. And we realize that there is such a diverse set of beliefs out there, and we want everybody to feel welcome. So
Mm-hmm.
just a little information about that. We kind of don't talk about this very often, because we don't want it to overshadow other people's experiences and how they feel about things. But yeah,
Yeah.
we have our own stuff to deal
Stuff.
with too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting when we listen to experts when they're talking about, I mean, just from like a general human standpoint of how do you get through hard things? Well, sometimes ritual is helpful and routine, right? There are things for me, even the word ritual makes me want to go like take a Klonopin because there was a lot. I don't know. I feel like my type of being a human, I'm an improv person, right? I'm a jazz musician. And so sometimes things like that are confining, but then I find something calming, like, for example, in a morning ritual, like waking up and taking the dogs out and then drinking my little energy drink and then reading a book, like one page of a book. And so it's taken me a while to separate the word ritual from a religious context into
From like blood
regular
ritual or
yeah, because I mean, a lot of times language can be it can be benign or it can be weaponizing. And especially when we hear certain things like social media has no nuance, right? And so people use buzzwords. And so now some word that can just mean whatever it means, now it's under this umbrella that has like a bunch of different feelings and like 5 social justice prerogatives
causes
behind it. And then you think of people fighting. So it's really interesting. I think I kind of like to treat life like a science project where it's like, this thing is bothering me. Why? It's like, well, the word ritual didn't do anything to me. But why do I feel like that? Oh, okay, let's take a look at that. And, I can reframe it for myself. And at the same time, for some people that maybe aren't religious, looking at some of those things that maybe religion brings, like constant meditation, like prayer and meditation, or giving thanks. Not to say that only religious people and religion brings that, but those are practices across the board in every religion
that we know of.
They provide benefits psychologically and mentally to people. So I think we can all learn from each other. You can take what works for you. If we're all in this together, and it's going to be different for everybody. But yeah, there are good and bad things. Definitely, I think from what I've learned from a religious community standpoint. But I kind of am learning to appreciate whatever has taught me in my science project of life, which is still going.
Thank you, everybody who submitted your stories. We would love to hear from anybody else who would like to just join in and let us know how they feel about it. Once again, I just think it's really fascinating that in this whole group of people, we have so many different and varied experiences, and sometimes they're diametrically opposed. So
also, guys, in the Widow Wives Club, we're so grateful for everybody that plays by the rules of checking your religion at the door, meaning don't try and force your beliefs on somebody else or your non-beliefs onto somebody else. I feel like we have an exceptional group of human beings in there that come from, as you can hear, like there's a lot of different things in these stories. So thank you so much for that. That's a testament to all of you guys in there. And let's keep that track record going after this episode. So hopefully,
which doesn't mean that you don't get to have your own feelings. It's just that they're your feelings and you don't get to tell anybody else that their feelings are wrong. So
like, I belong to the Church of Skateboard and Roller Skate. And the reason why you should believe is because it's the one true way to find happiness. Like, just don't do that. If you don't, then you're stupid.
Yeah. If you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos or help us find a new taco place, please go to buymeacoffee.com/widow we do now.
Until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're 2 young widows. We're just trying to help everybody figure out widow
we
do
now. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep. Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys. Such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.